shut up. I got that.
Idiot!
Everybody, he's Drew. He's Chris. I'm Ted. And if you haven't figured it out by
Our
now,
marketing department
this
is
is Vikings
amazing,
Report
aren't they?
with Drew and Ted and Chris.
Only decent thing about that audition was the end. Your dancing is terrible, the singing was horrendous, and you look like one of those creatures that live in the jungle with those massive eyes.
We are back, man. It's been a
while.
a month and a half. How you doing, Chris? How you doing, Drew?
Great, man.
How you been?
Looking forward to tonight's show.
That's it?
I've kind of missed you guys, but I like the time off. It's giving me, a chance to do some boogie nights on my end, and sometimes you need a break to refresh and recharge the engines.
I like simple pleasures like butter in my ass, lollipops in my mouth. That's just me. That's just something that I enjoy. Call me crazy, call me a pervert.
Age cannot limit what this wonderful boy can do for society. The rain made his care for the dog burn more intensely than ever.
Got to be excited about the Vikings' direction they're going. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing all right. It's been, like a month and a half since we last got together, and Ted is still digging Michigan stickers out of his basement and wherever else he might find them located. It's great to be back. Can't wait. This season's going to be better than a lot of people think. I think anyway.
I do too. Ruby, you out there? How you doing?
This
fine evening.
I'm just thinking about the last two stickers.
Yeah, apparently there's two stickers I still haven't found. If you missed it, Drew and Ruby came over on draft night when we did the live broadcast, and I found like 4 or 5, but there are still 2 I haven't found. Over on the other side of my basement.
You should ask your kitty where they are.
Ask my cat. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
There's the clue. What do we got going on for tonight? We got a guest tonight?
We do, man. And we're back. We're in studio. So we are starting. So we finished our positional analysis leading up to the draft. Now that the Vikings have their 2024 draft class, what we do is we look at each draft pick individually. Tonight we're starting with J.J. McCarthy. And this year we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to have a guest on for the first 2 or 3 draft picks. And tonight we're looking at J.J. McCarthy, the 10th pick overall, quarterback of the future out of the University of Michigan. And we're going to have a special guest. He's Thor Nystrom. And Thor has been beating the drum incessantly for J.J. McCarthy. He's going to talk to us, and we're going to have him on here when we talk about J.J. McCarthy. So he'll be on in a little bit. Yes! And that'll be our kicking off our draft pick analysis segment leading up to training camp in July, whenever that happens. So looking forward to that. It's going to be a great interview. Thor's a great dude. Been wanting to have him on the show for a while, and not a better time than now to talk J.J. McCarthy because, like I said, Thor is just a J.J. McCarthy acolyte, man. The dude he was on the J.J. McCarthy train like as the Vikings should pick him in the first round when people were still talking about J.J. as a second or even third round pick.
Because that's what heroes do.
Credit to Thor, man. He had the vision long before everybody else did. All right, but before we get on to that, hey, head on over to Purple Pain Forums, our home, away from home on the World Wide Web. That's purplepainforums.com. If you can't get the Purple Pain Forums, head on over to Daily Norseman. That's dailynorseman.com, the SB Nation home for Minnesota Vikings. That's Chris Gates' website. I used to write there a long time ago. He's still there. He's the founder. He started it in like 2006. Like if you could go back and find like the very first articles that Chris ever wrote. He did like a live like play-by-play. I think it was like the Washington Redskins game, and it was like Chris literally talking to himself. It was like 400 lines of Chris just talking to himself. It's hysterical. I was very funny.
We have a 2006 picture of Chris Gates, don't we? From 2006? Do we have that? There he is. There he is.
That was right after he got out of San Quentin. He did 5 for carjacking.
Did you still do Daily Norseman from prison in Quentin?
It was a little difficult back then. The dial-up access was, you could either get your hour in the yard, or you could go and get on the internet for a while. And sufficient to say, I didn't spend a lot of time outside.
Had to open up the cell door. Hey, nobody get on the phone. I'm gonna get on AOL.
That high-pitched squeaking noise, that was great.
Oh, man.
All right, so, Daily Norseman at purplepaintforms.com. No trivia tonight because we're going to take up a block of the time with the Thor interview. We're going to ask one question before we get to Thor's interview, but before we do that, Drew?
Ed? Yeah,
You
I'm
there?
here.
What time is it?
Cooler than you are. So why don't you give us your J.J. McCarthy information, get it ready to roll, and let's light this candle!
He's right. Light that candle.
He surely is. Let's light this candle.
Hail to the victors valiant, hail to the conquering hero. Oh, wait. Is that not the right one? Sorry. Light this candle!
All right, I'm cooler than you are. Why don't you fix your little problems and light this candle?
He's right. Let's light this candle.
He surely is. Light the candle.
Yes. Resume the countdown.
No, let's resume the countdown, for God's sakes.
Resume the countdown!
I knew you were going to try to blame that
Chris
on me
is off
here
the hook for
eventually.
one.
You know,
I didn't get it wrong. What the hell?
no, you didn't. You didn't.
No, I didn't.
All right, so before we bring Thor on, I want to ask you guys a question. Smoke is cleared. Free agency's pretty much over with. The draft is over with. I think the Vikings killed it in the draft. We kind of had our post-draft show. Drew, how do you think the Vikings stack up now when you compare their draft with the Bears draft, the Lions, and the Packers? How do you think they are competitively speaking with the rest of the division and the NFC and the AFC? Where do you think they stand?
There's still a lot to play out because if McCarthy works out and plays his first year, I think the NFC North is the best division in the league now. Got a lot of talent.
Do you really?
Every team, I think, had pretty good draft. This is the most excited I've been in a long time because the things that we lacked on last year, the running game, I'm really excited about with the Aaron Jones, getting Aaron Jones, and everything seems to be on a positive swing from the, 13-4, we're all high on that. And then the 7-10, we struggled through that. But I think every person, including O'Connell, has good experience going into this third season. Dallas Turner, there's a lot of excitement surrounding all these guys. And so I, too, think they had a great draft considering the situation going in. I'm happy with the draft picks, and I'm happy with the free agent guys. This is shaping up to be a hell of a season, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to the next season even more. That's a season we've talked in the past about being excited about 2025. I'm not going to get too far ahead of myself, but jacked up on what we're going to do this year. And then leading into the next year, we have all the cap money and JJ starting, and it'll be even more exciting. So exciting times for me for being a Viking fan. It seems like the gloom is gone,
Yeah. Chris, how do you think the Vikings stack up compared to the Lions and the Bears and Packers?
I mean, I've said it before. I think this season's going to be a lot better for the Vikings than a lot of the really smart football people seem to think it's going to be. I mean, the prevailing wisdom seems to be that, the Vikings are about to get left behind by the rest of the NFC North and the rest of the NFC and whatnot. And I just don't see it. I mean, sure, they lost Kirk Cousins, they lost to Neil Hunter or whatever, but they brought in a lot of guys that have the ability to fill those gaps, particularly on the defensive side, to replace Hunter with, Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel, and now Dallas Turner. Another year of the Brian Flores mad scientist experiment on the defensive side, and eventually the Justin Jefferson extension is going to be done. The Christian Darrisaw extension is going to be done. And, this team's still going to have a ton of cap space going into not 2024, but 2025. But I think the Vikings are going to be a whole lot more competitive in 2024 than a lot of people are currently giving them credit as being able to be.
The Vikings were 7-10 last year, and they lost their quarterback. They had to play not only the backup, but the third and fourth string guy, and we're still kind of in contention of the playoffs right to the almost very end of the season. I mean, they were, 14, 15 games in, and they were still fighting for a playoff spot. I think they're going to be very competitive for playoffs, if not the division. And then you look at like what the Lions did with Jared Goff. He signed a 4-year, $212 million extension with $170 million guaranteed. The dude is 30 years old. I mean, he's one Achilles injury away. What we saw happen to Kirk Cousins last year from that team being pretty much wrecked financially for like the next 2 or 3 years. I'm glad the Vikings are in the position they are in with their quarterback situation, because I think with J.J. McCarthy on a rookie deal, you saw what they were able to do this offseason with the defensive pieces that they were able to add. With what Chris mentioned, Grenard and Van Ginkel, Blake Cashman, they were able to draft Dallas Turner. All the cap space, they're going to have over $150 million in cap space next year, at least 100 even after the Justin Jefferson extension, the Christian Darrisaw extension. They're going to be sitting pretty in the cap. They're going to even be able to add more firepower, even though they're not going to have a whole lot of draft picks because of the cap management and the way Kwesi Adolfo-Mensa has been able to fix the cap in fairly short order. Like you said, Drew, next year is going to be the year. I mean, this year is the year they're going to be able to kind of grow together, and J.J. McCarthy is going to be able to figure out this offense and grow into becoming an NFL quarterback. And I still think they're going to be a playoff team.
And you could talk about both conferences. They're going to be a serious contender NFL-wise. I mean, you think this is a perfect time to get your franchise quarterback, guys, right when the team is turning the corner financially, Chris. That all the stuff with all those players with the big contracts.
Yep.
We got the salary cap next year. JJ, it's the perfect time, the perfect storm for 2025 for us to actually make that leap and get into the elite crowd where we're going to be talked about, and we're going to be, everybody stays healthy. We're going to be a mean machine, Ted. You talk about free agency in the draft. Just talk about positionally, not the player. Just look at the position. I think they addressed the positions almost exactly how I was hoping they would. The only thing I didn't see was a center. That's the only position I thought we were going to get a guy was a center, but everything else, I mean, McCarthy, Turner, Kyrie Jackson on the outside to give us another strong corner with Mekhi Blackman. I mean, positionally speaking, I think they're playing it perfectly. This is a great time to get our franchise quarterback. And next year, we don't have to go looking for a quarterback. Next year, we can fill those spots, Ted, with that free agency money. It's going to be a good year to have less picks. If you're going to have to suffer through another year of less draft picks, it's next year.
I've been thinking about not going after a center. The Vikings have been deficient in the interior offensive line for the last 6, 7,
40,
22
decade.
years. Yeah, 22, 23 years, whatever. But look at J.J. McCarthy's game. I mean, like when you watch him scramble, he reminds me a lot, and I'm not saying he is yet, but he reminds me when he runs the ball, he reminds me a lot of Fran Tarkington in the way he just is able to avoid the run and get to the outside, keep his eyes downfield, and throw the ball. Maybe, and I'm just completely speculating here, maybe the Vikings thought, look, we can be okay with Bradbury this year because now the Vikings have a quarterback that is not a statue in the pocket, and if he sees pressure, he can get outside or he can step up in the pocket and he can still keep his eyes downfield, make a throw if he has to, or if he needs to tuck the ball and run with it, he can get 7, 8, 10, 15 yards or whatever it is. I mean, he's not a running quarterback, but, you guys saw him play at Michigan. Drew, you know better than I do. Sadly, I know it too well as well, that he can make plays with his feet. Kirk was very much a statue. He preferred to stay in the pocket and make throws, and unfortunately just took way too many sacks sometimes. I think J.J. McCarthy is going to take some sacks. He's take some lumps as a rookie, but I think he has the ability to evade and avoid the rush more than Kirk Cousins would, for example.
He's not a running quarterback, but he's a quarterback that can run.
Yes,
perfectly.
And there's a distinction between the two. There are running quarterbacks. Like, there's Justin Fields. Justin Fields is a running quarterback. J.J. McCarthy is a quarterback that can run.
I would say Justin Fields is now a punt returner if you listen to what the Pittsburgh Steelers want to do with him.
Well, they gotta get their money's worth somehow, I guess. And the other thing that I know Drew's brought up a lot of times before, I mean, when things are not going optimally for JJ McCarthy, I mean, he had a game against, I think someone said Bowling Green, where he threw like 3 interceptions. But he goes out against a team like Bowling Green that he's supposed to absolutely just obliterate and throws a bunch of interceptions. And like Drew's always said, he's not on the sidelines, towel over his head, sulking away from the rest of his teammates. No, he's out there doing what he's supposed to do as the leader of the team. And, that's I think that's something that played quite a bit into to why the Vikings wanted to bring him in and why they seem to have their target specifically on him.
Good point.
Yeah. Like you guys have said, I don't think, the national gamblers, addicts have put the over-under for the Vikings, I think 6.5.
And hammer the over on that if it's that low.
Yeah, I think the Vikings should be better than that. I really do.
For entertainment purposes only, go ahead and bet on that.
If you want to bet Monopoly money, I do not endorse gambling. I don't gamble. But if I had like $1,000 of Monopoly money, I'd bet the over on that. That's just me.
Unless you win, then you owe us a cut.
That game in Bowling Green when he threw the 3, I think they were all first half interceptions. The defense was pissed not at JJ. They were pissed about him being put in that position, and they went out and got the ball back. I think Bowling Green had 14 yards the next 2 quarters of offense. The defense wanted to turn the tide for JJ. Offensive line's going to want to block for him. JJ to JJ is going to be unbelievable, and the whole spirit of the team is going to be more positive. Now, if we can get the fan base to start acting like being that positive, I think we'd be onto something.
I think most of the fan base is pretty fired up about the McCarthy pick. I think people were not wanting to give up 3 first-round picks and having to move up into the 3rd or 4th pick to do it. I think when the Vikings only had to move up the 1 spot and only give up a 4th and a 5th round pick or whatever the trade was, I can't remember off the top of my head. I think most people are fine with that. I don't think that's an issue. I think the general doom and gloom of Minnesota Vikings fans overall is still going to be an issue, and that's not going to go away until the Vikings win a Super Bowl. And especially the way the draft played out, because it was either at that point McCarthy or Nix, and I don't think anybody wanted Bo Nix over J.J. McCarthy.
They sure didn't.
I think everybody's happy with J.J. McCarthy, to be quite honest, and where they got him, and still keeping their pick 23 plus their first-round pick next year. Yeah, I don't think anybody's upset with how this draft played out. If you are, then you just can't.
We can't be excited about this team. I mean, come on.
Yeah, right. Exactly. All right. We have all decided the Vikings are not only going to go to playoffs, but they're going to win the next 4 Super Bowls. Boom. A lot to be written, so a lot to be done. All right, with that, let's go ahead and bring in Thor Nystrom, and we will talk J.J. McCarthy. And if you are not fired up about J.J. McCarthy, once Thor is done talking J.J., you will be. Thor, get in here. All right, so like we said at the beginning, we have a special guest. You can see him here on the screen. He is Thor Nystrom. You can find him on Fantasy Pros, on Score North, and he is the star in multiple Marvel Universe movies. Thor, welcome to Vikings Report with Drew, Chris, and Ted. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, guys. And yeah, I'm still waiting for the royalties for Marvel. They use my life story with that, and I'm still not getting any checks, but I'm glad that they memorialize it.
So one of the reasons we wanted to have you on is so we do after the draft is we do a breakdown of all the draft prospects the Vikings selected, and J.J. McCarthy, the first-round pick out of the University of Michigan. Before I go any further, I don't know if you know this, Thor, but Drew is a diehard Michigan fan. I am a diehard Ohio State fan. Chris is a diehard Ohio State, Michigan agnostic. And you were on the J.J. McCarthy train like long before everybody else. You not only were on the train, you were the engineer, like you assembled the damn train. Like when people were saying McCarthy was maybe a 2nd or even 3rd round pick, you were telling people, no. He is a 1st round pick. The Vikings need to draft him early. And why is that? Go ahead and just start telling us why you believe that early on.
Well, it's a 2-part answer. The first part has to do with my industry. And I think, when we came into the process, like after the national title game, mid-January and then into early February, and there's the rankings that are out there, the draft rankings. I think people don't really get that. I only know this because I'm in the industry, but a lot of the people that do draft rankings, especially the ones that have to have them out early, they haven't watched the previous season. There might be slight modulations to what they had in the preseason, but those rankings are not based on them having gone through a full catalog of the season we're just coming out of. And McCarthy in 2022, he was solid, but there was things he had to work on. That was when you saw him, the criticism of him locking onto guys the first read. You saw more of that. Some of the placement issues, you saw more of that. And at the very beginning of 2023, they played a bunch of cans in the non-con, and he had a weird game against Bowling Green. He threw 3 interceptions in that game, but then the rest of the season, all the way down the stretch, national title game procession of these dominant defenses, Ohio State, Penn State, Iowa, Alabama, then the title game against Washington. Their defense not quite as good, but was top 50. That is when his game took off. He only threw 1 interception after the Bowling Green game. So that was like the last 12, 13 games of the season. And that, like I said, that's when his game took off. That's when you started to see this stuff coalescing. I cover college football in the fall, and I watched damn near every Michigan game, especially, the latter half of it. So I was seeing him live, and what you saw in November and then through the end of the season against all those dominant defenses, the way he was playing, his recruiting pedigree, the athleticism, the obvious arm strength that jumps off the film, his ability out of the pocket when he's moving around to see the dude and then fling it, including 3 sectors down the field, the opposite hash. You can hit a guy in the hands on a rope, all that different stuff. You were seeing a top 10 pick. That's what it looks like. And so did I feel I wasn't going out on a limb. I knew I was saying something that other people weren't, but I knew once the guys in my industry watched the film of JJ McCarthy from that year, as I had done live, essentially, that they would have the same opinion that I did. And that's what turned out to be the case.
Drew, you're going to go ahead and probably agree with them, like word for word, because you're like a huge fan.
Yeah, pretty much in a nutshell, it's what it is. I believe the 1 interception that he threw after that was against Maryland, if I remember.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
He had an interception towards the end of the second quarter, but exactly right. Everything that he just touched on. One more item that he got better with from 2022 to 2023, I thought, was the deep accuracy. Yeah. He missed a lot of touchdowns before 2023. He had guys wide open. It would just miss them. And he really seemed to struggle on the long pass. And then in the red zone where he threw that Maryland pick, he's thrown a lot of interceptions down by the red zone. That the Bowling Green one was in the end zone, one of the 3. But those were really the only 2 areas. And then in 2023, he started hitting all the deep passes. And I was like, and I watched it really closely with my wife, and I said, he's working on things that he knows he needs to work on and getting better. That's, to me, what we look for in a quarterback. Because a lot of quarterbacks reach a point where they don't get any better. I mean, Kellen Mond, that's about as good as he was going to get. And he had a lot of snaps in the SEC. I think McCarthy, in any quarterback, as long as they're getting better from year to year, and he pushes for that. He wants to get better. And part of that is the training under Harbaugh. Harbaugh kind of mentally made up what McCarthy is, I think. After watching him get to Michigan, play behind, the hell was his name? McNamara?
Yeah, Cade McNamara.
Play behind McNamara, and then 2023, he was good in 2022, don't get me wrong, besides the long passing, but 2023, you know when it took charge at that post game after the Northwestern loss, when he just stood the mic and said, we're going to be back and we're going to win it all next year. And he walked away from I knew it. I knew right. That's what he's like. And so I knew he was going to come into 2023 team player. He worked on his long accuracy and everything else that Thor mentioned. And he is, he's a great quarterback. Great dude, great athlete.
Question for you, Thor. One of the things that was a knock, I guess, if nothing else, only word I can think of off the top of my head, was the volume stats. People talk about Drake May and Michael Penix Jr., the other quarterbacks, having more passes, more attempts, all the stuff that was talked about leading up to the draft. That has never bothered you. Why is that?
Well, because a lot of those volume things that the other guys were putting up, their empty calorie stuff. If JJ McCarthy had played or let's just say you switch Bo Nix and JJ McCarthy last year, there's a decent shot that JJ McCarthy wins a Heisman, and he's going to put up bazooka stats. JJ McCarthy didn't get to do any first down pre-delineated read screens to the outside that were a staple of Oregon's offense, or really any pre-delineated stuff at all. If McCarthy had played in LSU's offense, he wins the Heisman. So it's a context thing. And as far as what McCarthy, I just thought it was so unfair during the pre-draft, the box score scouts that we have out there. There was so much context omitted, but of course, if people want to have an opinion about something that they've never seen before, that goes with the territory. But with McCarthy, the context was he played by far the hardest strength of schedule of any of those top 6 guys, and probably of any dude in the class. I would have to, but I know the numbers at least on those top 6 guys. Michigan played the average, I believe, 36th strength of defense. Over last season, Bo Nix in Oregon, for example, on the other end of the polarity, they faced the 80th average ranked defense. And then, all the other 4 of the top guys, the first round guys, they were in the middle of that, but no one was particularly close to that. So McCarthy's playing the hardest competition in an NFL style system, pro style with under Harbaugh, that 12 personnel. And where a lot of those throws are over the middle, or some of these hard ones where you have to fit it through windows and beat the defender coming down. And then the other thing is, people just don't get about the thing. You're juicing the empty calorie stat stuff, when you're talking about it the other way with the volume, the screen pass on the early downs and such like that. Whereas McCarthy's entire statistical profile, it was accrued not only against the hardest defenses that any of these guys face, it was in a higher percentage of them, of the passes and the overall volume. It was in situations where the defense knew what was coming. The hardest passing scenario, hardest passing environment. So it would be Michigan would run on first down. A lot of times they'd run on second. And so when, a lot of these throws, it was 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 against the best of the best. And JJ McCarthy didn't have the receiving core that Nix did, that Penix did, that Jaden Daniels did. Like you go down. So he's throwing, again, defense knows what's coming. All these NFL defenders out there, the teams that he was playing. And then Roman Wilson went in the 3rd round. I think Cornelius Johnson might have gotten a favor from his old buddy Jim Harbaugh to get selected at the very end of the 7th. The tight end who got taken in the 4th by Michigan, Barner, he's a blocker and a special teams guy. He's not a receiver. The other tight end there is is pretty solid. Colson Loveland, he went back to school. But, it was like him and Loveland and Roman Wilson, pretty much the only solid receivers that you had out there. Blake Corum played the majority of the season because Donovan Edwards strangely was on a milk carton all the way up until the college football playoff. Then, of course, he went buck wild against Washington. But Donovan Edwards is the receiving back. That's what he's skilled at, not necessarily Corum. So McCarthy basically was beating the best of the best when they knew what was coming, right? And was defeating them there in this pro-style system. That stuff all translates, is what it is.
Okay. So draft night, everybody has their draft crushes, and you were, again, like we said, you were on JJ McCarthy, I think even before the season ended. Draft night, everybody's thinking the Vikings are going to have to trade up to 5, give up 3 first-round draft picks to get JJ McCarthy. Drake May, I don't think Drake May was ever really a serious option for the Vikings. I don't think New England was ever really serious about giving up the number 3 pick, I think it was. 5 comes and goes, or 3 comes and goes, 5 comes and goes. Chargers were a rumored trade option. The Falcons picked Michael Penix at 8, I believe it was. McCarthy's a real option. What is going through your mind when it kind of becomes pretty obvious that the Vikings are probably going to get McCarthy, and then the trade with the Jets at 10 hits, and it's going to happen? Your guy that you have been beating the drums for the better part of 4 months, if not longer, is now going to become a reality.
Yeah, it was fun. That was a cool moment. I was excited for sure. I was nervous all the way up until the moment I knew. I didn't need him to read the card, but I was nervous up until I seen the Jets colors on the bottom of the ticker. It turned purple, and we have a trade. I knew the name that was going to be announced at that point. So that's when I'm starting to pump the fist. We were on a live stream, and when I saw the color change, it's like, all right, he's coming home. At that point, like I said, just excited. But up until then, you're nervous, and I said this even, in the weeks leading up to the draft of, the big question for Kwesi and the thing, more so because your evaluations are done at that point. The harder thing became, would you call the Giants bluff, and are the Giants bluffing? And I don't know if I would have had the guts, if I'm Kwesi, at that point to, let the Giants pick, because they had put that stuff out there that they were going to take a quarterback, and McCarthy had said he'd spent more time with the Giants than anyone, and all yada yada. And you had, again, like you had to call that bluff. But if you called it correctly, that's what would open up the opportunity to get McCarthy at a cheaper sticker price, both in terms of the rookie scale and in terms of the more importantly, in this case, the equity that you had to trade over. And then the only other one was I knew that the Titans were going to stick and pick a tackle. But when it got to the Bears slot, the Falcons one was bizarre, obviously. But then the Bears one, you knew that there was a possibility that they could, I don't know if I can screw over, if I'm allowed to say screw on here, screw over by trading down with the Broncos. And by the way, confirmation that Sean Payton was trying to get into that slot. And he wasn't trying to trade it for Bo Nix, because there was never any scenario where Bo Nix was not dropping down to the Broncos. And if the Broncos hadn't taken him, we don't know where Bo Nix would have gone, but I don't think the Raiders were taking him. That he would have fallen, quite a bit further. But, once the Bears stayed because Odunze was there, then you see the trade. And yeah, it was pure excitement over here for sure. Both, because that had been a supposition I came out with early. Obviously I like McCarthy, but I seen the fit that, with the Vikings, and obviously the need there. So that was cool. But then also just like, I'm a Vikings fan first and foremost, as far as that stuff goes. So like, I was just more so Jack for the organization and Jack for, the next decade or so, guys. He's a real good one.
Chris, what do you got for Thor?
So you're saying this isn't like draft day where you're still doing research on dudes the day of the draft, basically.
That's only Sonny Weaver Jr. No, like my stuff's long done by then. The last week of it, because I turned my 500 board in the week before with the one with the 500 comps and everything. And then like the last week before the draft, it's like you got to do mock drafts and like some prop bet stuff, for the site. And you go on a whole bunch of spots. But no, like once I put that 500 board out, like all my work on those guys is done. So no, I wasn't looking to see how many people had gone to Bo Nix's birthday party at Oregon last year, nothing like that.
So you touched on your 500 board and whatnot, and for everyone that hasn't seen your board, I mean, everyone going into the draft kind of had their hierarchy of quarterbacks, who was number one, who was number two. McCarthy was the fifth quarterback off the board. I think it's pretty obvious that you didn't have him as the fifth best quarterback in this year's class or anything like that. So two-parter here. Where did you have him slotted among those top quarterbacks? And had McCarthy gone back to Michigan for this year, would he be the pretty clear-cut quarterback one in 2025, do you think?
Yeah, so McCarthy was third. He was the third QB for me, but also third overall on my board. So I went QB. I had Caleb Williams 1, Jaden Daniels 2, and then I had McCarthy 3, and then some other guys at different positions in between. And then I had Drake May was my QB 4, but I ranked him 8th on my overall board. And then I had Bo Nix as a late third rounder on that, which I stand behind. Comped him to Kenny Pickett. Broncos fans will see. They're talking all kinds of smack now. Well, we'll see when the season starts how they like that pick. And then as far as like if he went back to school, well, if he and May had gone back, they would have clearly been 1 and 2. If just JJ went back, he would have been the clear number 1 heading back to school. The top 2 guys, at least in my opinion, I got a different one, I think, than most people, but it's same one too. I like Shadir Sanders, and I know that like I like his game. I know there's some weird stuff with some of the talk they do on social media and yada yada, but I think Shadir Sanders is pretty good. And then my number 2 would be Carson Beck. But like the rest of it, we're gonna next year's quarterback class. Someone needs to emerge. I'm pretty confident that the 2 guys I just said are going to go in the first round. I don't know about the rest of them. Quinn Ewers needs a lot of work on the mechanics, more or less, because he's got a good arm, but the accuracy comes and goes. That's being generous. And then we'll just have to see on the rest. But yeah, McCarthy would have been, in that scenario, would have been 1 drop, then Shadir Beck for me.
Drew, what do you got for Thor?
How long do you think before he starts playing? This season, next season? What do you expect?
Well, I mean, some of that's going to be the coaching staff's prerogative, but what I can say is you could play him week 1, whereas I do not believe that you can play Drake May week 1. And I would have even said, I was saying that pre-draft, and I would have said that if Drake May was here because Drake May, the acclamation, Drake May has weeds in his game. And then he came from the one season when he was dominant for the first 10 games of 2022. That was in Phil Longo's offense, and that's not translatable to the NFL. Sam Howell, Matt Corral, the one other dude he had.
Did he have Trubisky?
I don't think he wasn't there with Trubisky because he was at Ole Miss before UNC.
Okay, I get you.
But like those kind of guys, you've seen it with that. And it's not to say that Drake May has more physical ability than them, but then switches into the other system this year, and there was more struggles. There was more pro type stuff in that, but he didn't play quite as well. But with McCarthy, you could start him right away. He just won a national title in a very similar system, the 12 personnel deal. It's just
we don't have to talk about the national title crap.
Well, Ted, if we can get Ryan Day on here too, maybe we can explain to him what a national title is.
Oh, here we go.
Best guest.
Thank you for joining us, Thor.
Thanks for coming on. It's been fun. No, I'm kidding. It's
best guest we've ever had in the 3 years of this show, right there.
Man, Ryan Day, I don't even know if he was watching it, but if he was crying.
He should have.
JJ McCarthy, as you know, wanted to go to Ohio State, grew up an Ohio State fan, and they preempted his scholarship offer by offering one to Kyle McCord. Kyle McCord stinks.
Yep. I'm sure
and now he's in Syracuse. So, yeah, it's a tough scene.
This is the reason I hated JJ McCarthy as an Ohio State fan, but I will love him as a Vikings fan.
It's on Ryan Day, though, not JJ.
It is, yeah. But McCarthy takes flights like that and internalizes them, makes it personal, and will make you pay for it for years. He is the ultimate competitor. They had this thing at minicamp where he made a bet with Kyrie Robinson, the 4th-round pick. He's like, hey, look, I'm going to have 3 or less incompletions, and if I do, you're going to run gassers. But if I have 4 more, I'm going to run gassers. And it's like little stuff like that accountability thing. And he actually even threw a pick, and so he ended up running gassers. But it's not only that; it's this intangible leadership thing that I don't know a whole lot about Drake May, and I don't know a whole lot about Daniels or Caleb Williams. And I think Caleb Williams is going to be a monumental bust. Because he went to Chicago. It didn't matter who went to Chicago; they're going to be a bust. But I don't think Williams has the mental makeup for the NFL. And add that to being in Chicago, and be that as it may. But you put McCarthy's mental makeup. I saw him at Michigan just beat Ohio State like a rag doll for 2 years. And he's the kind of guy that the minute the game starts that you're probably going to lose because he's just that type of guy. He's going to fight you until the clock strikes 0, and he's going to end up winning. And that is the kind of mentality that the Vikings have not had at that position. I don't know about since ever, like maybe Joe Cap, Tarkington. I don't know. It's going back a long ways. And that's one of the reasons I came around really fast on McCarthy, because I don't see that in any of the other top quarterback prospects that were in this draft.
For sure. The bad storylines around JJ. And one of them was like, they would have won the title with anyone. And it was the rest of the team, Drake and JJ there. And I would just have to laugh. It's like anyone that would say that, it's like you don't watch college football. You have no context for what you're speaking about. They didn't realize when JJ went to Michigan, the Michigan fans wanted Jim Harbaugh fired. In 2020, the COVID season, Michigan went 2-4, and the pitchforks were out for Harbaugh. And Harbaugh, in order to keep his job, had to take a pay cut. But they got JJ McCarthy in that recruiting class. JJ had kept his commitment, and then was also helping them recruit, and it ended up being that nasty recruiting class that they had. And then you go from that season to then the next 3 seasons when JJ's on campus. They made the college football playoff every year. Obviously, this past one they win the title, but it's like he was the catalyst to turn around the entire ship, not someone who was being dragged there by the rest of his teammates. And like the whole narrative was just ridiculous.
That comes from a whole lot of Vikings fans still being scarred by the Christian Ponder pick back in 2011, I think. There are people who, when McCarthy was drafted, like, oh, he's Christian Ponder too. I'm like, dude, he hasn't even set foot in the practice facility yet. I mean, like, give him a break. But
Christian Ponder 2 went 2 picks later to Sean Payton.
He sure did.
Let me throw a little bit of what makes JJ special, being from a Michigan standpoint of watching his whole career there. By the way, Dylan McCaffrey was going to be the guy, and he was going to be the long-term. Nobody even talked about JJ McCarthy. Big team player. All the players wanted to play for him. Corum came back to win the national. Corum could have went to the NFL last year, but he came back because JJ wanted to win the whole thing. He's the ultimate team quarterback. And let me tell you, every time I saw him make a mistake, there was a couple games when he threw early picks in 2022. I think he threw one on the first play of the game, maybe at Indiana or at Maryland or something. He threw a pick, and then later in the first quarter, he threw another one. That guy was never sulking on the sidelines with a freaking towel over his head. He's standing next to Harbaugh with his helmet on, and you can raring to get back in there and make amends for what he had done. That's what he is. And that's a good sign. That's a good sign because too many quarterbacks aren't mentally tough to want to get better from what they're doing. They get rolled over by the media, by all that. He's not going to get rolled over. His teammates are going to love him like the teammates loved him in Michigan with Chris Jenkins. All those guys. McCarthy was the leader. When he got interviewed, he talked about Corum and the defense and his wide receivers, his tight ends. He never talked about himself. There's a lot to like about J.J. McCarthy, and frankly, I am stoked that he's the quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings. But his attitude is tremendous, guys. It's tremendous.
All right, one question, my last question, then we'll throw it to Drew to get the question and get you out of here. I know you're kind of pressed for time. So I want you to give me one skill that he has, physical skill that translate the best to the NFL right now, and the one thing that you think he needs to work on before you think he'll be able to start in the NFL.
Well, his tools are all upper level, both the arm strength and then, which was confirmed at the combine, 1 mile per hour beneath the max velocity record that Josh Allen had, that Joe Milton tied with all over his tape as well. But, you know, He has data on that as well. And then the athleticism, he had the 6th fastest 3-cone time at the NFL combine, regardless of position, at 17 pounds heavier than his Michigan bio. We have pretty good reports that if he had run the 40, that he was probably going to be in the 4.4s. The last confirmed test that he did on that, I think it was before this past season in the summer. It was a 4.48 in Ann Arbor, you know, but he didn't need to run the 40 to go in the top 10. The reason he didn't at the combine, he had a hamstring, he said, but still ran still did the 3-cone, did really well. But the one trait of his that I would say that'll be that makes his next level projection pretty scary, and I think will be the most fun for Vikings fans, is most quarterback prospects coming in, you know, you might have the strong arm and you might be athletic, but very rarely do those things work in conjunction with one another. With McCarthy, that's the entire beauty of his game, is that when he's on the move, he takes his mechanics with him. Or in any situation, he takes mechanics with him, but on the move, he takes them with him. Eyes down the field, upper body cocked to throw, so he can get it out as fast as he needs to. And then he always has the throwing platform under him. Like, he'll even be contorting around, he'll move, but he's always contorting to where if he sees a look, he can just immediately get that thing out on the move. And this is why he's so accurate while he's scrambling. One of the better guys we've seen this the past several classes. Last season against that nasty strength of schedule, and they went on to win the title, 72.3% completions, and was 5th in on target rate. This is just overall. But when he was scrambling, he completed absolutely ludicrous 71.4%. So barely lost less than 1 percentage point while scrambling compared to the regular. It's just, that's stuff sort of unheard of. And it's not, none of it was freebie stuff. Like, you saw him numerous times scrambling around, shucking to the third sector of the field.
Yeah, you don't got to remind me. No, you don't have to remind me.
They ain't shutdowns. They ain't shutdowns. Yeah, I mean, he can go, and it's really tough on a defense, because at that point it's, you know, you're 4 seconds, 5 seconds, 6 seconds, maybe even 7 after the snap, because he can evade people. The 3-cone, he put the proof on it there as far as like the lateral agility and that sort of stuff. But then he also has that speed and then the gumption, the creativity back there, and so he can extend those plays. And he can hit anyone. Again, opposite hash, third sector. He can hit that. Certainly hit anything, that side of the field or in front of it. So, to me, that's like the funnest and the scariest part of his, the projection to the next level. Scariest for opponents, not for him. And then the other one is what to work on, right? Was the other one. The work has already begun, but the deep throwing. And the issue with that earlier on in his career was he's got such a strong arm, and he was the best quarterback in this class throwing over the middle, the 10 and 19 between the hashes, because he throws it like a hurler coming over the top, takes the big step in, and it's just heat rings. It's like 100 mile per hour fastball. But early on he was, and even, into last season, he was doing sort of the same mechanically for the long passes. And so instead of, sort of a shorter step and then sort of lofting it up to get the more arc, he was doing the same big step into it and then just friggin' fire it down. So that's why you saw that he had like laser long throws, be 50 plus yards, but it was just a laser. And there needed to be some, it's not anything but a mechanical thing. It's a tweak of how you're throwing the ball, basically deducting velocity for loft trajectory, right? And you started to see this a little bit down the stretch. You started to see a little bit more loft on those ones. And he even mentioned that he was starting to tweak the mechanics for those deep balls during the season, like as it, in the latter half of it. And he was destroying people. So it looked like it was working, at least the initial things. But then also you've seen it during the combine and then the pro day. The combine, his deep balls, they were all like the, what you look for, just that perfect loft rainbow kind of thing. And then at the his pro day, he almost hit the ceiling on a couple throws, like the one to Corum down the left, where Corum went out and then he chucks it out. He almost hit the top of the indoor facility that Michigan has. So the mechanics of those, if you want to compare those, if someone was just out there, you put those next to the deep throws that he did in 2022, you will see the differences of the throwing between those two different things. So, that's something to continue to work on. Another one, slight tweak for the throws to the left. People are giving him a hard time about that. It was a similar sort of thing where he was taking the exaggerated lead step out there, then swinging his full body to make those throws. And he still had the arm strength, the velocity, everything like that. But in that situation, you tell him like, dude, just hold on a second, turn your body that way. You don't go from the square to like taking to swinging the step over and then throwing, because that was where there was just a little bit too much action and the ball could sail on him just a little bit. But it's just like little tweaks like that, and that was the left thing. That was something that he got better at, as the season went on last year. More tweaking with that.
Okay, Drew, you get the last question. We'll get Thor out of here. So he's got places to go and people to see. More
Excellent.
JJ McCarthy conversions.
Daniels and Knicks, they had 4 first-round receivers too. JJ didn't have that. You give JJ that, he would have set all sorts of records. Thank you so much for all the info you've given us. The question I have to get you out of here on is, I want to talk about Kevin O'Connell for a second. I want to talk about just going into his third season. He had the 13-4, and then the 7-10 last year, going into his third season. I wanted you just to give your opinion of how you think he's been a head coach, what he's good at, what he needs to work on, if anything, and then just an overall idea of how do you feel about Kevin O'Connell at this point, what he's done and what he's got going forward?
I think he's good. I think we have a good coach. The 13-4 season, they were stealing all, it was like, when you say like the receivers, like the 50-50 balls and they tilted in their favor, and it becomes more like 80-20. That's what he was doing with the coin flip games in the season before. And to me, that goes down to the coaching, the decisions that you're making and stuff like that to win on the margins. So often nobody predicted that they would do that well that first season. And a lot of that I credit to O'Connell and what was his first season as head coach. And then last season, to me, they overachieved. If you look at the injuries that they had, and then they weren't playing with Cousins, now they Mullins, and now you have to go and trade for someone and then throw them into the lineup right away for a couple games and Dobbs. Teach them the playbook in the headset as you're calling the play. And then the game with Jaron Hall, that was just funny. And then all the other injuries they had. There was a time Jefferson wasn't playing, all the different injuries they had last year. I mean, you just look at the games that they got of the players they got them. How many coaches get to 7 wins there? To be honest, I was annoyed that they kept winning some of them games. That was the time where it's like, Kevin, just maybe don't coach quite as just maybe give a couple of those games away because we could be picking higher. Maybe we're not that, but we ended up getting JJ and Dallas Turner, and we still have a first round pick next year. So, all's well that ends well. But no, I think he's a good coach, and the full complement, like the full vision of him and Kwesi, we're getting there, right? Like maybe not this coming season, but it's going to be the one after that, because then you'll have your, all the draft picks from the class. It'll be mostly your guys. Plus, they open up the war chest, the cap space, by making this swap, the bad Michigan quarterback from Michigan to the good one. Just kidding, Kurt. But yeah, and then you'll have all the cap space to fill your holes on defense.
All right. Thor, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for taking what time you did have to come join us, talk about J.J. McCarthy. Hope we can have you back on later on this season, talk about his Rookie of the Year chances and MVP chances. And then after the season, we can talk about a Super Bowl MVP performance after the Vikings bring it home finally.
Sounds good. Yeah, you guys will have to fish me out of a gutter somewhere.
Yeah, me too. Wow, we'll probably be in the same gutter, man.
I'll meet you downtown for the rally down there for sure.
All right, before we let you go, where can we find you at, Thor?
You can find me on Twitter at ThorKU, and my stuff's on Fantasy Pros.
All right, Thor. Thanks again. Really appreciate it.
All right, man. Thor.
Thor, what do you know?
Is he asleep? No. I'm pretty sure he's dead.
That was just bonkers, man. Thor's a great dude. And like, which Thor movie did you like best? The first Thor, or with they were all together, or like that Thor movies after the fact? I don't know. I thought he was good in all of them.
He was.
I don't know.
Is Thor the guy that lives underwater? Is that
no? He's that's the guy with the hammer.
The god of
thing.
thunder.
Yeah.
Oh, not the America
No,
guy?
that's Aquaman.
America?
No, that's Captain America. No, the guy underwater is Aquaman. That's not even Marvel, man. That's DC, dude.
I haven't seen one Marvel movie. Not one.
Are you serious?
We gotta change that at some point.
I haven't seen one Marvel movie.
Well, we're gonna start. That is gonna start being our movies now. You're gonna have to watch them. They're actually pretty good. They were good up until Endgame. With Infinity Wars and Endgame, they've kind of sucked out. The Doctor Strange movies have been pretty good, but other ones have kind of sucked.
The Guardians of the Galaxy movies are choice too.
Oh,
if we're
they are.
in the Marvel universe.
Yeah, they are.
Absolutely.
Thor gave us his insight on when JJ's going to. What do you guys think starting this year, next year, halfway through the season? Give me your guys' each prediction. I'm not going to hold you to it.
Go ahead, Chris.
There's a long way to go, camp and everything. But what do you think's going to happen? I know you hope that you start week 1. We all do.
Absolutely. I hope he starts week 1. That would be great. But I mean, Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings have said that they have a series of benchmarks that J.J. McCarthy has to hit before they're going to throw him out there as a starter. The only people who know what those benchmarks are Kevin O'Connell and presumably Josh McCown and J.J. McCarthy and basically nobody else, especially if they tell you that they do know what they are. But it would be ideal if he were to hit all those during the preseason and wind up starting week 1 against whoever it is. But I think Sam Darnold is going to get at least a few starts in here before we see the dawning of the J.J. McCarthy era.
You listen to J.J. McCarthy interviews and you watch him on TV and you think he's this kind of dopey kid. He's got the big poofy hair.
Pompadour.
Yeah, pompadour. And
straight cat strut, I'm a ladies guy.
And you're thinking this guy should be in like a biology class somewhere, not be quarterback for a professional football team. But let me tell you something about J.J. McCarthy. I've said this on the show before, and I say this as a guy that hated him because I'm an Ohio State fan. This guy is the most competitive dude I have seen as an opposing fan. If his mom or his grandma was on the opposing team, he would cut their heart out to win a football game. I'm telling you, man. He would. I mean, Thor talked about that Ryan Day story in recruiting.
Right.
He's not coming to this team to sit on the bench.
No.
He may not win the job right away, but he's trying like hell to win it. I think he's gonna start week 1. I mean, Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah didn't come to Minnesota to stake their futures on Sam Darnold. With all due respect to Sam Darnold, I know Sam Darnold has been in crappy situations with the Jets in Carolina, and this might be a rehabilitation project for him, but they're not banking their job on Sam Darnold. They're putting all their chips on the table with J.J. McCarthy. And if they think J.J. McCarthy can handle running an NFL huddle and running an NFL offense in an NFL regular season game, J.J. McCarthy's going to start. And I'm here to tell you, I think this kid can do it.
Okay, let me go one little bit step further on that. When it comes to the preseason, I want to see J.J. McCarthy playing every snap.
Yeah.
Being that we don't have a Kirk Cousins that's been here forever, that just sits on the sidelines and waits to play in the regular season, does that affect JJ's playing time, knowing that Darnold's new too, Chris and Ted?
I don't think it's going to too much. I'm sure Darnold's going to get some reps, but I mean, particularly now that we're down to only 3 preseason games now as opposed to 4, I think they're going to try to get McCarthy as many snaps as they can. I mean, like Darnold might play, a series or 2 in the first preseason game and a series or 2 in the second preseason game, but I think a lot of the preseason is going to be the J.J. McCarthy show, and he's going to get his opportunities. Now, obviously, he's not going to be out there with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and T.J. Hawkinson and those guys, but he's going to have that opportunity to go out there and command the huddle during the preseason. And I think he gets the bulk of the snaps, obviously, in the preseason because Nick Mullins doesn't need snaps. I mean, who cares? Jaron Hall, again, who cares? I mean, whatever. But this is J.J. McCarthy's team. It's going to be his team sooner rather than later. And, like you said, Darnold needs to get acclimated, but I think the bulk of the snaps are going to go to McCarthy.
I agree with everything Chris just said. If McCarthy does not start, or if he does, whenever they decide to start J.J. McCarthy, when they do start him, don't pull him. You can't commit to him and then pull him if he sucks. You got to let him take his lumps and learn and play him unless he gets hurt. I mean, if he gets hurt, then you got to play whoever. But once he's in, he's in.
Yep.
Ted, I know enough about J.J. McCarthy and Jim Harbaugh's background to tell you this right now. The only way he's getting pulled is if we're up by 40 points.
Okay, that's fair.
He ain't coming out of a game because he's not. He's too much of a competitor, and he's going to tell Kevin O'Connell. He can give him the Nolan Ryan. Remember when the pitching coach used to come out to Nolan Ryan, waving his ass? Nolan Ryan, what are you going to tell Nolan Ryan on the mound that he doesn't already know? I mean, what an embarrassing walk of shame. Get your ass back in the dugout.
All right. So that'll, I think, unless we got anything else we got to talk about, boys, that'll be pretty much it for episode 132.
Great show with Thor.
Absolutely. That was a hell of an interview.
Thor brought the thunder.
He did.
Thor brought. What did he do with Mike Tyson? Thor brought.
Yeah, he's gonna be Thor.
Thor
and Thori.
He's gonna be Thor tomorrow.
It was stupendous.
I hope Mike Tyson isn't watching this because we're all going to be next.
Good enough stupidity for one evening, I think.
Certainly happening.
All right. So look, it's been a lot of fun this evening. Thanks so much to Thor Nystrom for coming on and talking up J.J. McCarthy. I'm fired up for this season. I'm fired up for that draft. And Dallas Turner, I know we didn't talk about him. We'll talk about him next week. We hope to have another guest on to talk Dallas Turner. Thanks so much for subscribing, for liking, and for commenting and following the show. We really appreciate it. For me, I'll try to do better the next time. Chris, say goodnight. Drew, take us home, brother.
Excellent show. Excellent show. You guys make me smarter every week. I'm glad to be back on talking football. It's been a while. Great guest tonight with Thor, going over the J.J. McCarthy stuff. Everything you want to know about J.J. McCarthy. He clued me in on everything. It's just Vikings Report is back and rolling. And looking forward to next week's show. Going to be awesome. Say good night, Chris.
Good night, Chris.
Say good night, Ted.
Good night, Ted. Go Bucks.
That's getting edited out in post.